This episode of the Wedding Film School Show is brought to you by MusicBed, the best music licensing platform for wedding filmmakers. Head over to themusicbed.com and enter our code WFS on checkout to get a free month on your annual wedding subscription. Now, on to the show.
But what I love about like the mini DV dad cams, I've tried to really think through, how do I apply that to my current camera and what I'm capturing? How do I channel the dad cam? Like I used to almost on principle not want to shoot detail, like any reception details, or like I wouldn't even film all the speeches or something because I'd be like, I'm not like that. This is just going to be art. That was really out of like desperation of like I felt like was just under the burden of like not running a business well, really, for the last few years.
That's a really cool emotion that I don't think is very obvious in a wedding film. And it's like, to answer your question, it's like not just do the obvious. Like the obvious is include speech, include B-roll, include these elements of a film. There's a lot of emotions in a wedding film.
Personally, full transparency, like I make a lot of mistakes shooting. Like I get so caught up in like being there that I'm like, oh frick, like I forgot to run that audio source. Like we're using camera audio.
Get right in my bag. Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wedding Film School Show. My name is Jared, and we have another great show for you guys today. We have a very, very special guest that we've wanted to have on the show for a very, very long time. But before we introduce him, Jason McCutcheon is by my side. What's up, Jason?
How are you doing, Jared? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. My wife woke up saying that she feels a little sick this morning, and so I was like, well, stay away from me because I have a wedding this weekend. Kind of those
Do
Wednesday
I have a wedding
vibes.
this weekend?
You don't have a wedding this weekend.
Okay.
You're off, but I'm on. And it's kind of like that day where it's like, if she's sick, then I'm probably going to be sick in 3 days. So I can't be sick. So it's like downing the ginger shots and, making sure that you're
Quarantining. For yourself.
She sleeps on the couch,
Yep.
No. But yeah, man, what's going on with you?
I'm excited. We got a trip to Tokyo planned with Wedding Film School. So we're all going in December down to Tokyo for secret reasons.
Yeah, top secret reasons we can't disclose. I don't know. If you bringing it up, is it breaking our NDA? Are we allowed to reference?
I don't think we can say why we're going, but we are going. And it's going to be fun. We're looking forward to that trip. I am going to be bringing a 4-year-old on that flight to Tokyo. So wish me luck, everyone.
Yep.
But we're excited. It's like the one place she has to go to. She's like, Dad, I want sushi. Let's go to Tokyo. So,
oh, man, she's going to love it. I think Japan and Tokyo specifically is the coolest place in the world.
I'm excited.
In the entire world. I love it.
So speaking of cool things, we have Josh from A Little Long Distance on the show today. So how you doing, Josh?
What's up, guys? Hey, I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So Josh, he's a filmmaker out of Nashville right now. Out of Nashville.
Yeah, back in Nashville. We've moved around a bit, but in Nashville currently.
Cool. And Josh is known for a lot of things as a filmmaker, but I would say just a really authentic, human connected storytelling strategy, I think, is one of the things Josh is most well known for. A lot of mini DV, found footage / archival stuff, and then of course, normal camera work like everyone.
Josh was the first one to ever use Super 8 in a wedding film.
He was the very first person. Super 8.
So just fundamental, built our industry on that. And
how was it shooting Justin Bieber's wedding, Josh? So, Josh, before we get into the interview, I'd love to do something that we like to do with our guests where we really talk to them about something that filmmakers aren't that excited about, which is their gear and their work. You ready for that?
I'm ready. All right, put me on the hot seat. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. First question. Tell everybody what's in your kit.
All right, so in our kit, we've had the Sony A7S III the last couple years. And then I use the Tamron 28-75 has kind of been our go-to bread and butter lens. I've just become really, really familiar with it. Really love using it. Don't have to really think about it much. It's kind of become a second hand, to use it for me. So that's kind of the main. We got a couple A7 IIIs as backup cameras and some not too exciting lighting and audio setups. They're pretty. I think the H4n and an old light, it's funny. When I got into wedding filmmaking like 20 13 or 14. Do you guys remember the company called Valair? Did you guys watch them?
There. No.
Oh man, dude, this guy Tim Twineman out of Denver. Oh, you guys would love it. He like from 2010 to 2015, he was making this stuff just amazing. Anyway, he had a light that he used, and I stole that light, and I'm still using it to this day. So it's a sweet light. But anyways, so and then a couple, bring a couple dad cams, most weddings as well, and maybe a Super 8 camera.
What kind of dad cams are you shooting on?
I think I got the ZR 450, I think it is. Straight up like from the 90s, like a tape, like I've had people that reach out and be like, what camera do I, for home video stuff, like what do I get? And I think people assume that I have like, which is one of the newer versions that's like digital, but it's it's straight up like the one that I grew up like making prank videos on. Like it's like
that
it's
Sony?
got tape.
ZR?
It's a Sony. I think the
Yeah,
Sony.
okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
You remember? So
I was
you
only.
still,
So the next question I have is, tell me about a wedding that you shot that you're super proud of, that you think represents your style of filmmaking.
Yeah, so we shot one this summer. This couple, Jack and Callie, here in Nashville. A great couple, like heart on sleeve, high energy. But Jack's also a filmmaker himself. He does not weddings, but he's that's his day job is shooting, editing. I think he goes on the road on tour, and so he's doing a lot of shooting, a lot of editing. So yeah, I don't know about you guys, but for me, like that, just my like bar becomes just so much higher, and like my inspiration too. I just feel like I become so inspired working for other creatives because. Again, I know that he's kind of looking at all those little small things, and I want to, impress them and for them to really like it. So had that energy going in, and then they were also just, I did bring one of those dad cams and had a just great bridal party that was all about it, and I found the right people to just be like, hey, take this thing and roll with it all day, and got a lot of gold footage in there too. And then the whole thing just with like, I just felt like with the soundtrack to it and kind of the way we were able to incorporate they sent a lot of, kind of childhood photos and videos, couples photos and videos off their phones over. And honestly, we work best probably with couples that have been together a long time. So they've been together since high school. And so they had like, a lot of photos and stuff from high school days, prom and all that. And so yeah, it just took on this kind of nice shape, the kind of like retro 80s vibe to it that was, honestly, the ones that I make that are like that kind of give me the best feel, like most personal inspiration. So we're kind of trying to lean in and go in that direction more moving forward.
Lastly, can you tell us about your mentorships? I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in that.
Yeah, I'm just now starting to offer one-on-one mentorships. I'm really excited. I've been wanting to do this for a few years now, and we get people that reach out and ask, and I just feel like I've always been so crunched with the backlog, with shooting, with everything going on, that I've just never really felt like I had the margin or the mental energy, and it's always pained me because obviously I'm always honored that anyone would ask my opinion on anything, and much less I just love meeting new people, love helping people grow. I always learn, when I get to help out somebody and hear from their perspective. And, honestly, I love talking with people that are kind of just getting going because I feel like it always brings some fresh perspective to kind of what I'm doing. And, Jared, I think you were saying before the show, anytime you do the mentorships, like I feel like it almost benefits the mentor, just as much or more. So yeah, we're going to be able to do kind of a small handful in this off season, not going to have too much of a backlog to hold me back from it. So we kind of have a page set up on our website now that makes it pretty easy to just book a session if somebody was interested. And there's a kind of a intake questionnaire that kind of dives into where you're struggling in your business, where you're struggling in your actual craft or your art, and just kind of then we can kind of just explore that together and see if we can't come up with something that's a little bit helpful.
Why don't you tell everybody what's your website?
AlittleLongDistance.com. Pretty easy there. Yep.
Head over there, little long distance. Is there a big old button, or is it /mentorships?
It would be, in the menu. I'm just not putting it together, so I'm trying to remember. I think it's in the menu, but you could also go /mentoring. Either one will get you there.
Great. So head over there, sign up for a mentorship. It's only $10 million, and
and it goes to my DVD, my dad
Totally
cam
worth it.
collection.
yeah, so you can buy more dad cams. Josh, you kind of have a unique approach to wedding filmmaking, and so before we kind of get into the interview, why don't you kind of tell everybody about how you like to make wedding films and a little bit about A Little Long Distance, just so I think people can understand who haven't seen the work, maybe what we're talking about here.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, when we started out, I mean, I feel like my heart going into, when we started Wedding Films 2013 was very much just about weddings themselves. I love the energy at weddings, the live event, the adrenaline of capturing something in real time. So we kind of transition into that straight out of college when I was, basically transitioned from making jackass prank videos to wedding filmmaker, more or less, which was took a little while to iron out.
That's kind of like a lot of people's journey.
I think it is. I think it actually is for a lot of us, right? And so yeah, but yeah, the weddings. I mean, I love the energy with the people. I love all the different stories that are happening with weddings. I love that it's not just we do the work beforehand to get to know this couple, the bride and groom, try to dig into them with questionnaires, the video calls, everything, try to build that trust and try to have it to where, on the wedding day, they can be themselves. But I just becoming more and more interested in, how can I let everyone there that's going to be kind of, in my head, I think of myself with this camera walking around as like having like a bubble or like a beam just like that's pointing awkwardness at people that's like going to make everyone just kind of get tense and not be themselves. Like, people are always in the back of my mind thinking about it. So I love the kind of art of trying to, there's so many little things we can do on the day to try to just let people just relax, just be yourself. Like I'm just a person that's just a camera here to capture this. And so our approach is very much, I think, people first, not just with the couple, but just people first, being there to celebrate. And the camera, I mean, hopefully just being kind of an extension of my eye in the sense of, I don't want to be thinking about it too much. For a while there, I mean, obviously there's so many cool lenses out there in the world to choose from, to pick from, and different primes and whatnot. And I do love them all, but like, I just wasn't loving that I was having to think about which one to put on throughout the day. Like, I just like being able to, start my day and I'm like, I'm rolling and I'm just completely in it with my heart and my eyes and trying to look around and see what's going on. And yeah, so hopefully, I mean, that can, I feel like oftentimes lend itself to footage that ends up being, in my, hopefully pretty organic and just natural and not too inspired by stuff that feels too produced. And I've done all that. I mean, I've done all the, staging and the prompts and the this and that, but I don't know, man, I could sit down to edit and I just wouldn't feel much about it. And I was, I would just rather find this, kind of in between moment that's actually authentic. So, yeah, just looking for that stuff that's real, man, that makes you feel that's like, they're going to look back on it and actually think something about it. They're going to look back and it's going to have meaning to them and not be like, oh yeah, that was when they whispered. That's when they told me to whisper something funny in that person's ear. Like, I'd rather it be like, cause what does that mean to them? I don't know if maybe it'll mean something, but I would rather set a space and help create a space. I mean, cause us and the photographer do have so much control over the space on the day and the environment and the culture for the couple, for the people. And so I'm trying to figure out I don't know exactly what the right way is, but I'm trying to find that balance of letting things just unfold, man. Just letting them be, like, let it be okay to be a little uncomfortable, but you're going to be yourself at least, and hopefully that can kind of come out.
Well,
so,
it's interesting to me, Josh, you didn't mention one time mini DV, Super 8, or archival footage.
yeah.
Right? Because I think a lot of people, they look at your work and they're like, he's the guy who does this. And we were teasing even before the interview and talking about it, but it's like, that's not really what you're trying to do. You just happen to do it sometimes, and you don't even do it all the time, do you?
Yeah, no, definitely not. I mean, it's only a small handful. I think the home videos people, like to give us a nod for, and we do like to do that. I mean, really as much as we can. Not all of our couples do it, but I would say that's probably in terms of my own personal inspiration and creative fulfillment, like using childhood home videos is like my favorite thing to incorporate into a wedding film. So we have done a good handful of those, and I'm okay if people think of our brand as that way. I mean, and I kind of have tried to translate, why I love. Sorry, you're hearing my dog digging up his bed over here. But what I love about like the mini DV dad cams, I've tried to really think through, how do I apply that to my current camera and what I'm capturing? How do I channel the dad cam more or less? And so that's when I'm talking about my approach. I guess I'm trying to think about, well, a lot of the things that I was inspired by because I love watching childhood home videos of other people. I mean, it's super weird, but I'm like, I love sitting there and like sifting through, because usually by the time I get there, I know these couples pretty well, and so I know these families pretty well, and I just feel like, wow, what a privilege to get this glimpse into this story. I mean, it's really, these people often don't know what they're sending me. Sometimes they're sending it in, they're like, we've never watched these before, and I'm like, who knows what's on that day? I mean, that's pretty vulnerable to send it in. And so, yeah, I just, and I always am attracted most to those moments that are just very, very genuine, that show something about that relationship in that moment in time. And so I'm like, well, what does that mean for how I'm capturing wedding days? And, I think that I want that same feeling to be emulated, I guess, with what I'm hopefully providing for the couples.
That's cool.
Oh man, I was I told you about working at that thrift store down the street, and one of the things that I found was this projector, and it had all these big spools of film, and I had to fix the projector, put a new bulb in, do like some things with the power. But when I eventually got it on, and I was like playing this projector up against the wall of all these spools of film that someone had just donated, being like, oh, someone can use this spool of film to, I don't know. But I was able to watch this family and their whole like life story. And that's like so cool, because you almost find like you're discovering someone else's like treasures.
It's like cave paintings.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, kind of. There's
No,
something to
I
that.
understand,
It's
Jared.
awesome.
I do understand what you mean, man.
And I was fascinated. I was probably there for hours putting on different spools of this family's films. I was
All I
just
can
like,
think of is that movie Insidious or Sinister.
Oh,
I'm like, don't watch it. But yeah, so we met you at Vision Quest, which is like a mucky muck filmmaker event put on by the great
Mucky Muck.
Alex and Whitney Douglas. And so me and you like rode on the bus together, and we got to talk and stuff. And I knew I wanted to have you on and just talk about filmmaking. And Jared had been mentioning he had been watching your work for a long time.
Yeah, and been a big admirer of your work, Josh. Just that personalization, like really telling a family's kind of story, was always like super interesting. And obviously your keynote was great. And I think your style of filmmaking is really attractive, obviously, to us as filmmakers, because it is just so real and there's an authenticity to it. But it clearly requires some level of like buy-in, right, from the couple, because you can't just do this type of film probably with anybody. So do you find that's hard to get that level of buy-in from your couples? What does that process kind of look like?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I want to break down the facade that all of our couples are that way. I mean, we work with a lot of really great couples, but I have realized that, I would say a lot of them, like I said, are at least willing to send in the archival footage stuff. So that's helpful in how I'm approaching things. But, at the same time, in terms of the actual wedding day, not everyone's got that same, and especially I feel like as we've, the last year or two journey for us has been, as we've, tried to obviously go up in price point a little bit and figure out where do we just, where's our market? I feel like we've hit this bit of a ceiling of like, well, I don't, I'm not really sure, but once you get into this range over, I don't know what the range is. I mean, you guys might have thoughts on it, but like that you do start getting that bit of a barrier to the couple and to what they're willing to do for you on the day. Not for you. I don't even mean that in the sense of like, just for my own art, but like, I guess if you're willing to invest whatever it is, maybe 20,000 and over in a wedding video, then your whole wedding is going to be a certain way that like just doesn't really lend itself to maybe like what I'm talking about. And so that's where I'm like, maybe that's not for us. I don't know. Maybe you guys have thoughts on
I think it's really cool that you basically like, that you've seen it, because we see it too. Like, I don't know where the dollar value is. But
yeah,
it's more like, okay, who's more likely to have money? Well, someone who has a busy life, someone who is more connected to their job, someone who wants to have a big celebration. Who what type of person is going to be more likely to shoot tons of video of themselves? Right? Because usually like their dad was rich, and so then the kid's rich, and it's generational way of living. Like the dad worked 70 hours a week. He didn't do a lot of videos of their kids, and I just think it's like a different type of person, right? And we see it too, is like, what do I mean? What does the film mean to the couple at different price points? I don't know where that breakdown is, but I do know like different demographic groups are more or less connected to like what, even their wedding in general. I don't know. I don't want to say it doesn't mean as much to them, because I don't believe that to be the case, but I think how they want to express themselves like on camera is definitely different. I've definitely felt that. We're lucky to we tried to do the archival thing one time, Josh.
Okay. How'd it go?
It was actually pretty good. Like, but it was like, I got one clip, which was this dad passed away 2 months before the wedding. And I was like, I want to include him in the film somehow. And I got the last voicemail.
Whoa.
that he left her. It's actually the film I sent you.
Oh, yes.
And that's the one thing that, like, the last thing he had told her about herself, and it was really devastating. And so I will say this: that was a professional baseball player. We did 5 minutes of portraits with them. They were not connected. They were nice people. They were great, but they had a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I will say this: if you work hard enough, I think you can extract this out of most couples in some way. And so I think the topic I was talking about before was really this, which is how do we humanize wedding filmmaking more? Like, we're not all going to get a little long distance film with this couple that's super into it. But I do think there are things you can do with every single couple, because at the end of the day, it still is a family. It's still like the genesis of a family. And there is a human element. And so what do you find is the things that you like to do that maybe like help people to draw out their personalities more and make it not so anesthetic, medical, like, or even techie?
Totally. I think that's a great question, man. So I've been, just gnawing on hard this last few years. I've said, I mean, we've kind of at a tipping point where I'm trying to figure out, can we continue to do that? Like, is it possible kind of in a certain market to do that? And I think you're right. I agree with you that I believe for the majority it is possible. I feel like, say the scenario where you're really not having much access to the couple before the wedding, which is, I haven't had a ton of experience with that, but my understanding is that happens as you move up in the ladder a bit up in markets that maybe just the accessibility of the couple isn't there as much. Well, in my opinion, then those times that has happened for me, it's like, there's two things. I mean, one is I'm going to lean even more into the relational side of it on the wedding day in terms of, I think there's that disconnect where you may be a bit more vendor than you are that friend element you want to be sometimes to them. But I think it can still lend itself to, it can be scary. It's like they're not as approachable on the wedding day, but I think if you have that relational courage to maybe set the tone at the beginning with them, with the people around, maybe, breaking the ice in terms of, hey, I'm just gonna, what's going on, man? Congratulations. Like, just don't even worry about me. You just have fun with your people. Like, I'm gonna just be here, kind of fly on the wall. Like, I'll probably be really kind of up in your guys' faces, like hanging out, but we're just gonna have a good time and trying to maybe help relax everybody. Kind of the same approach, but I feel like sometimes even more so, in those different ones. And then two would just be like, being okay with there are limits in my head to how interesting some stories are. I mean, there's some stories are more interesting than others, and I don't really mean that in a bad way, but I think there's a lot of pressure sometimes on, finding our ideal clients and pulling out the story and the this and that. And honestly, I get a lot of joy now from just delivering like a film that's, I like it, but it's not my favorite, but the couple's obsessed with it, excited about it. And I think you're doing a job well done to anyone that can do that, even if it's, hey, this one was just a little harder to access the couple, but it's out of our control. There's so many things out of our control in the day. And I think people beat themselves up over, oh, I didn't get this portrait time with them. I didn't get this whatever with them. And it's like, to me, I'm just becoming, I feel like every year more hands off with my approach of like, this is your wedding. I am just want to capture your wedding is what I want to do. I don't want to involve myself at all, to be honest. Like, I don't want to stage you. I don't want to tell you what to do. I just want you to be here to celebrate. So, and if that, if that's the culture that they come from and it's like a little stiffer, then that's just them. I mean, I would like to do what I can to help them loosen up, which is why I talk about the, relational side of things. But at the end of the day, some people, that's just the way it is. And I don't think we can beat ourselves up over that. It's, if I get a couple a year that I feel like kind of check all the boxes, and I feel pretty blessed. So, you just got to be ready for those ones.
Yeah, I think I can tell that you, just by the work that you put out, that you're like a good listener. And I love the aspect of like filmmaking where it is just like, hey, I'm taking what you're giving me and I'm going to take that. I'm going to think about it a little bit and then I'm going to output it depending on who they are. Like, I like that. And I think that's something that we've tried to find out as we're kind of like trying to build towards a more luxurious client, people with more money so that we can raise prices that much more, is like, okay, well, my upbringing was much different than the people that I'm filming. Like, these people have freaking boats and, they go horseback riding.
Summer in places.
They summer places. And I can't really relate to that. but I think like I'm trying to understand their world a little bit more and the things that might be important to them that maybe aren't as important to me, or just I haven't been exposed to as much.
Isn't that what it is? Is like,
No,
I think a lot of artists think that they're filming artists.
Yes.
And they're not artists. They're like, and I think we fall in love with this idea of like people who work is really important to them are like, oh, that's so gross, you know, or like people who are more reserved. It's like, you know, you need to be authentic. You need, and it's like, no, they are being authentic. These people love their jobs. That's
totally, man.
That's who they are.
Yeah.
Like
that is such a
reflect
good
that.
point. Yeah, that's such a good point. And I totally fell prey to that. I mean, I feel like, again, that was a few years ago. I kind of hit that, you know, point where I was like you said, yeah, that's a good way of saying it. Like, I can assume they're artists. I think I assumed if I made the best art and always like that was the first and foremost thing was my own art, then that would just, I don't know, lead to my own success and happiness and everyone else's, because they would whatever, love my art or whatever. But I'm like, you said, I think it's more interesting now because everyone's so different to have it's like that blend now of like, I have a vision somewhat as an artist. That's why they're hiring me. But maybe it's really a 50-50 almost of like, you know, yeah, let me learn about, like, I feel like, for example, getting into a little bit the higher end weddings, like I used to almost on principle not want to shoot detail, like any reception details, or like I wouldn't even film all the speeches or something because I'd be like, I'm not like this is just going to be art. Let me tell you about it. And then it's just like, there's a service that we are providing. I want to serve with as many possible elements as I can from a video perspective. You know, get my creative fulfillment in this way, build my brand in this way, but then over here, like, you know, let's offer these full doc edits and let's shoot the details that they've spent all the time.
Well, who butters your bread is the question, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, Josh, we talked a little bit about, you know, creative side. Obviously, that's a huge element of what you do. And I really do see, like, and not just to blow smoke up your ass, but like, I really do see you as like leading like a creative, you know, type of wedding film revolution and doing things that are way, way different. But when it comes to like the business side, like what are your goals? What's a successful year look like for you guys? Are you doing 5 wedding films a year? Are you doing 20 wedding films a year? What's your kind of typical makeup kind of look like?
Yeah, for sure. We've usually done, I think, around 18 to 20 has probably been an average, but that was a lot of travel too, and so that really burned us out pretty hardcore up until, I mean, I guess like just COVID around is when it all just kind of toppled and had to kind of figure out a new game plan there. And that's around when we moved back to Tennessee as well. So the last year or two has been trying to build those, local planner networks now. And I mean, I was telling Jason, you know, I'm just kind of new to this learning the planner game. And even, I mean, I feel grateful that I feel like a bit of an organic relationship with a couple of them, but I'm, you know, trying to, you know, learn some of the things. Like I need to go back and listen to Lindsay's talk again. A lot of great takeaways in there. I remember of, you know, just ways to massage those relationships. But yes, this year we only did 10, and I, you know, that was really out of like desperation of like I felt like was just under the burden of like not running a business well, really, for the last few years. And obviously COVID didn't help with that at all. And so I was like just needing a reset. So I was just became, you know, I've been a yes man all the way up until right around COVID. And then I just was like, I'm turning away everything unless it is like, you know, I'm not doing back-to-back weekends next year. I'm not traveling more than a couple times. Like I'm just stripping it away. And then kind of unexpectedly, I mean, we ended up having another kid and moving houses, and, you know, like our mortgage went up and this stuff. So now toward the end of the year, it's like, well, I probably could have done a couple more, but it's okay. I'm glad I get to, you know, have some room now to finally do these mentor sessions I've been wanting to.
Go help them out. Help them pay the bills, guys.
Feed my kids. This is what it's all about. But no, it's good. I was telling you guys too. I mean, I've like literally just had an ongoing note on my phone for like, man, it's probably been 2 years of like, oh, need to update this on my site. Need to do this in my CRM, like this. And I've just been like so just grind heavy on the editing, and not saying that's good, but I've been so just desperate for it to be manageable, and I'm finally at that point. So I'll probably be doing some of that.
It's
this
super
offseason. Interesting
the way you like, and like really humble of you, like to kind of say like, I tried something, I had like a laser focused idea of exactly what I wanted, and then there weren't enough people.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's always been one of my premises, Josh, is like we got to be careful when we're educating people on this, because it's really easy to get this like idea that like, oh, Alex Douglas, Sculpting with Time, every one of his couples looks like his, Italy wedding.
Yeah.
And I only want the ideal
Right.
client, because we love that phrase, ideal client. I always tell
Right.
people my ideal client is someone with money,
Yeah.
who will give it to me. And and it's funny. Like I was thinking about like creating more human films, but also just doing whatever you can do to get paid. And one of the things that happens to us, Josh, is like we'll get these last minute inquiries. The person will be like, "Will you come and do this thing?" And I'm like, and Jared will go like, "Well, hey, listen, we got this last second thing. Do you want to go do it?" And I'm like, sure, whatever, because I'm greedy. So like it's just like 10 hours of my life, and to make $6,000, why not, right? So I go to this wedding last week, and it was fine. Like it wasn't what I would describe as my ideal client, though.
You weren't inspired?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't actually. But there was the sweetest people in the world. And I remember like working my way through the day, and I was like, okay, this is weird. This is not going the way I want it. Not that they did anything. It's just there was scheduling things. There's issues. And we get to the speeches. And this is why I think it's important to like actually slow your roll a little when it comes to like thinking your ideal client all the time, because we don't. And we don't always know what's going to happen. And there's shooting. And like there was a second marriage. The daughter, I think, was like 16, and she was one of the bridesmaids. I have no idea about any of this, by the way. She gets up and she gives a toast, and like literally I'm crying during this person's toast, because she's just like,
wow.
Well, it's like daughters, like if a daughter shares something, it just gets me. And like she says like, "Oh, Mom, you're the best mom I could have ever hoped for," to this stepmom. And it's just like, you're just there and you're like, I could be judging this wedding beforehand based on the location. I don't like the venue that much. It's not my favorite venue to shoot. I could have been like, I never want to shoot this venue. I could have been like, look at the budget. I could have looked at their pictures on Instagram. Nothing about that would have made me think it was a good story until I shot it. And I think that's really like, we got to be careful with that trap, because anyone who's willing to pay you what you want to make a living and put food on your table, there's probably a story there.
Yeah. That's a good point, man. And I mean, yeah, I love that, again, about weddings, that they just come to us sometimes. And, but, like you said, I think that's just something I've learned in the last couple of years of, have you guys heard the phrase, I can't remember who coined it or where I heard it, of one for the meal, one for the real.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
So
the
I
time.
don't know, it's stuck with me too. And for me, it's usually like, I don't know, I feel like it's about 10 for the meal and one for the real. And I feel like, taking the pressure off of ourselves a bit to it, and that's actually, now that I think about it, that's probably the biggest hurdle that I ran into a couple of years ago, was that upward trajectory of not only your business, but your art. And I thinking each one has to be better and surpass the last. And I think realizing it's, the nature of what we're doing and how many we're making, like, freeing myself up a little bit to not have that pressure to make it the best thing that the world's ever seen, but like just something that is, again, how I see it, got our stamp on it, but is, gonna make the couple super happy. Like, and it has increased my editing efficiency like tenfold, no lie. Like I would get so overworked, like I would sit there for weeks, it felt like, sometimes probably months, just thinking like, if I just do something in my power, I can make this the best piece of art ever somehow. Even though this, like, the elements were not there, they just weren't there, and that's okay. Or they're, it's, or they, some of them were, some of them weren't. But for the couple, for what the wedding was, like, it's gonna blow their minds. It's gonna be a keepsake. It can still, and this is where I agree with you from earlier, Jason. Like, I think it can always be a keepsake. It can always be something that somebody's gonna watch in 100 years. It's always that. It's always
that's
something
what we
like
always tell people. Like Jared, like we're shooting 220 wedding films this year.
Yeah. Wow.
As a company, and everyone loves them.
Yeah. And that's what I think is amazing, is I feel like, again, I don't know what my thoughts would have been on a volume brand a few years ago, but now I'm like, that is so amazing that you guys can serve and make happy that many people. I think it's fantastic. And
we were talking about it today, because we had one wedding film that we all watched. We're like, ugh, like, man, personally, there's certain things that I'm like, we made a mistake on this part of the day. Like, we can't repeat this. we have to talk to our shooters about covering this better and all these things. We send it to the couple and they're like, this is incredible. And we're all like, awesome.
well,
Good. I mean,
dude.
that's great. But they were there, right? Like they were at this wedding. They know what the day felt like. And the fact that we were able to elevate their day to make it feel even better than it actually was. I think we need to cut ourselves some slack.
But also,
Like you
what
said,
does it
that's
really even mean
huge.
to be authentic? That's a buzzword, and we use it in a very specific way that eliminates a lot of people's authenticity. Right? It's like that person was being authentic. That's like I did one for a woman. She's like an executive at Amazon, and he's a engineer. And they were not psyched on anything. We were shooting images. They're like, "Can we be done now?" They paid a ton of money for a lot of different artists, and they were just like, "Can we be done now?" Oh, I find out later. I'm talking to the planner. The bride it was 9:15 or something. I had left like 15 minutes before. The bride's like, "I think I'm done. Let's call it."
Just call the wedding?
Yeah.
That's a wedding.
Wow.
She just ended the wedding because she was just like, and so like everything I was reading on my camera, that's who she is.
Right.
She's just business, doesn't care. It didn't want to she was perfectly happy with everything everyone did.
Yeah.
Like what I'm reading is who they are. And it's like, you got to be careful that you're not like interpreting people's authenticity as your authenticity. It's like, they're not you. They're not necessarily the people you would hang out with, but they are being authentic.
Yeah, Jared, to a good point for what you were saying, and with the authenticity too. I've been really surprised at even people that are, again, in my eyes, they're paying a lot of money. I personally, full transparency, I make a lot of mistakes shooting. I get so caught up in being there that I'm like, oh frick, I forgot to run that audio source. We're using camera audio, dang it. And so I'm literally editing one right now where it's like, goodness, dude, I'm just beating myself when I'm doing it. But again, I'm like, I do the best I can to fix it up, but I'm surprised by and even lighting stuff. I always just tell my second shooters, do all the lighting and audio for me. It's the best thing you can do. I'm not very good at any of it. You're probably better. I'll tell you, you are going to be better. So you just do it. Or if it's left to me and I mess it up a bit or whatever, I'm just surprised that, that couple paid whatever they paid, and I'm not hearing a complaint about the light wasn't that good or the audio wasn't that good. Even it's because the content is in there, and that seems to be, I mean, at least for our brand, it works because it's kind of that raw, gritty. I don't think, obviously, that wouldn't work maybe for every company that's brand is clean and all that, but it's been funny at what we can kind of, I don't mean to say
what you can
away,
get
not
away
really
with,
right away with, but that's kind of what I'm saying.
It's
I'm only bringing a camera, no lights or audio.
It's a live event. It's a live event. It's not we work in some production, Jared and I, and it's a totally different experience. Wedding filmmaking is not that. Wedding filmmaking is even the most authentic, or the most buttoned down, refined filmmakers, they're still running gunning.
Right.
That's essentially what we're all doing. So I think it will be authentic.
Yeah.
Just by the very nature of the way you're covering something. So I would say, Josh, when it comes to knowing how to craft a story that's connecting with a couple, when I see your films, I think you're extending their story beyond the wedding day. That's to me what it is. It's it's giving a more 3D look at this couple. What are the elements that you're kind of looking for when you're going through this archival footage and you're talking to this couple and you're meeting them? Are you planning that story out ahead of time, or are you kind of reacting to the wedding day? How does that work out?
Yeah, man, that is a good question. I would say, okay, I'll go with the example of the home video stuff, because we do use that in a lot of our films, the childhood. So this is them sending in childhood home tapes, of them. And I generally tell them stuff between that kind of 3 to 8 range seems to work really well. Ages 3 to 8 or so, that kind of golden years. And I do love to do that all afterwards, after I've already shot the wedding, got to know everybody, and been a part of it, because I have a real grasp on who the people are, like obviously on the biggest day of their life, all that. I've seen that side. So I think it's like peeling back the curtain now. The home video actually ends up kind of steering a lot of the direction of the wedding films when I'm doing it that way, because I think it kind of magnifies so much of the relationship, I think, and I can find these little nuggets to pull from. And then especially, if you get lucky with the bit of a toast audio or a bit of something that can kind of complement one of those parts that you pull out. And then I mean that almost always is going to be the starting point for me in terms of where do I want to go with this, because I want to let that be brought to life, and then kind of let that drive the whole story, if that makes sense. So I'm usually looking for those little nuggets, and they send me in it might be a 2-hour tape, and I love kind of sitting there and scrolling through to look for that little hug or little kiss or little dad playing again with the daughters. Yeah, I mean our oldest is a girl too, and it's like that becomes even more profound for me every year as she gets older. And I'm like, wow, I have a 6-year-old, and now I'm looking at your 6-year-old, and then like I'm gonna put this piece right next to you walking down the aisle with her, and then edit it to where or maybe little things. It can be like the dad's coming down the aisle, and I'm looking for that one moment where he might just be blinking and closing his eyes, or clenches his jaw, where it's like that feeling of pensiveness maybe, or reflection, and then clip to that home video footage where you're able to kind of cast onto him that projection of he's going through the nostalgia in his own head. So those are my favorite moments to try to create. It doesn't always work, but that's kind of the puzzle to me, is like, how can we make it feel like these people are actually or even with the couple in their relationship, how can we make it feel like this kind of again montage flashback, you're in this cyclone tunnel of like just memories and nostalgia, and it's all just peaking and crescendoing on the wedding day. That's the stuff that gets me excited.
Dude, there's so much thought that goes into kind of what you do. Like I was catching up on your most recent work on your site before we hopped on, and like the first film that I watched, I think it was probably the first one on your website. It was like you start hearing the best man's speech, and you're zooming in. You're doing like a post zoom in on the best man standing behind the groom, and it's just like and I think in his voiceover, it was like, as I'm, standing here today or standing beside you to talk, I'm thinking about these things, and you're zooming in on that. It's just like so thoughtful. Like, and that's what I meant when I said, like, you're a good listener. You're actually just listening to like the footage that you have, that found footage stuff. And then you're finding a way to apply it in a way that just like feels so seamless. And that's, I think, as storytellers, that's what makes good storytelling. It's just, it's not trying too hard. It's just making it seem super seamless so that the viewer can just grasp on. And man, I love it, man.
Well, don't you
so
think that
Thank you, man.
you're resolving one of the conflicts of wedding filmmaking, which is like lack of tension? Like what makes bad wedding filmmaking storytelling is like a total upward trajectory.
Right.
Like, it's better and better and better, and yay, now you're gone and they're walking out of the sparklers. And I feel like what you're doing is creating like a false dip in the story. Like you're giving it a break. And I feel like it's like feels very emotionally satisfying to be like pulled out of the epicness of a wedding day from time to time into a common moment, and then back into this big wedding day. I feel like Alex does a similar thing, but he'll do it in a different way.
Alex,
like,
who?
Douglas.
Oh, Alex. Okay.
Yeah, he's
Alex
like a pretty.
Douglas.
He's a
yeah.
fine
with Time.
filmmaker.
Have you heard of them,
about
Jared?
him?
He's like fine.
We have to insert him into every podcast.
He's just
yeah.
but like a lot of people do that too.
yeah.
Even like a lot of filmmakers. I was watching some of Yoni's recent work, and like really good wedding filmmakers, whatever it is, will give you a break from the wedding film. And almost like whether it be like crazy environmentals or like time lapses or just a portrait session they shot that's like really like sexy and like just totally different than the wedding. I feel like we're all looking for that, right? Like, how do I change the pace up? How do you create surprise when there is no surprise? Everyone knows what happened. They were there.
Totally. Yep. Wow. That's a great point, man. And I do feel like home video stuff is almost like a cheat code, because it's like it can pull you directly out of it into this, especially again, like I love the moment when, for example, when I look for on the day is like the after the dad like gives the daughter away, like, and he sits down with the mom, and they like sometimes have this little moment, not always, but they sometimes have this little, she just puts her arm around him or something. And it's like, when it's sweet, like it hits, it's like, dang, that was like, that was the end of their journey. Like that was and then it's like, again, like let's, flash to, not to mention flashing to some like, stuff with her daughter, son running around. Like you're just like, you're totally pulled out of it and feel that. And that's what I kind of live for that stuff of that, feeling of, life is grand and life is beautiful and fleeting and so how, anyways, if you can.
So you don't get that
into
from
film.
filming table details?
Yeah.
That doesn't do it for you.
Not quite. Yes, I don't. I do it to serve. I do the details.
I don't know.
To serve.
I kind of love shooting table details, and this is what I've always said. In defense of table details and in defense of planet porn, like this is what I always say is like to that bride, those table details have been in her mind potentially for 20 years. Like for some
totally
people, like the image of being a princess and having this crazy wedding has like been their lifelong dream. So I don't know. I feel like it's personal.
I would also say
you have a good point.
The table details are very cooperative. Like they don't move. They do exactly what I want, and they don't talk back.
And I can light them.
I could just shoot them, and
when you say it that way,
exactly what I want, and I can just relax for a second. I think that's what I like about it.
It's one little moment of calm.
Yeah.
That is funny. I think you guys make a good point because I think it was silly for me to scoff at shooting them when I started out because of that exact point, that it so lends to the story. And I think I've actually, that was brought to my mind this past summer. We shot one as well. And I do actually, I do kind of like these moments where, I don't know if it's just certain weddings or the higher end world where they do the room reveal with the couple. Yeah. And so that's kind of sort of new to me, but so yeah, having like shot all the details before and then capturing like in our style, that kind of handheld feel with the bride, it was like, oh, this is like actually you can see the dream coming to life here. And it's not something I would do, but it is like you said, it's something she clearly has envisioned for a very, very long time.
Well, I'm telling you, like, you get a microphone on her or him, you capture that audio, you create that story element. Like,
that's very true.
I have a planner next year who she's like, here's how I want you to cover this. She's doing 3 dresses. I want a tripod by the elevator, and I want to do a time lapse of having to go thoop, 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 and change all her dresses.
Oh,
and I'm like,
okay.
I'm like, I'm down with that. Like, that's dope, right? That's a fun story element. We're going to have some fun with that. It's like, I just think like just expanding your definition and like of what it means to be human and authentic. It's like, it doesn't have to be unproduced or like, it can be super pretentious and still be real. Like these people are just, that's what they're into. And how do I let that be the film? And you tell it in your way. And I love how for you have a certain desire to communicate a certain way. And I think if you're listening to this, like, I think, some of you might want to emulate some of what Josh does. And I think that's awesome. Josh was clear, like not every couple wants to do that. And that every creative choice you make creates limitations. Just be clear about that. But that being said, there is a way for you to communicate a very human story with however you want to tell a story. That's what I want people to get out of Wedding Film, this podcast in general, but also this episode. Jared, one thing I was going to say to you is like, with our style of filmmaking, like you heard his talk at Vision Quest about, I don't even remember what was it titled, Josh?
Oh,
Put you on the spot.
Good question. Yeah, well, it wasn't I think it was called Vision Quest Notes on my computer.
Vision Quest Notes. His
Vision Quest keynote.
But he did his keynote, Vision Quest Notes. Like, you were talking about how it kind of impacted you with what we do. And what we do is probably the standard wedding film, right? How do you feel like what Josh is doing can work its way into every filmmaker, not just hipster people who are really cool and love all the stuff, or are good at the stuff that Josh is good at?
Well, something that I'm kind of thinking through, and it's kind of just what Josh said in explaining, like, a moment that he really loves in a wedding film is like when the dad and mom are kind of enjoying the moment, and they're really proud of their son or daughter or whoever. Like, that's a really cool emotion that I don't think is very obvious in a wedding film. And it's like, to answer your question, it's like, not just do the obvious. Like, the obvious is include speech, include B-roll, include these elements of a film. There's a lot of emotions in a wedding film. It isn't just a romantic, like, I, Becky, take you, Chris, and I will love you, and I will do the dishes, and I will watch your favorite Netflix show every night. It's not just like the things that they're saying, but it's the interactions between each other.
I can't believe it. We are here.
Yeah. Have you seen
at this moment?
Have you seen that Instagram? Oh
Yeah,
my God,
it's
it's
so
so funny. But yeah, just not just doing the obvious. Like, I think it's clear because you have a timeline and you have all the things and the things that you see on a timeline ahead of time. You're like, okay, I'm going to use all these elements. But looking for the things that aren't super obvious. And
what's the story behind the story, right?
Right.
And
right.
some of it you can tell ahead of time, but some of it is like I knew at that wedding for New Year's Eve a couple years ago, I knew that their dad had passed, and I knew that was going to be a part of the wedding film.
Yeah.
Some way. I didn't know how until we shot it. And then I'm thinking, like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? We have to. He was a character on the day. He was a part of the day in such a heavy way. He was mentioned so much. It's like looking for those opportunities in your wedding that you shoot to really, really connect with what's important to these people. Yeah. Right? I feel like everyone can do that.
Yep.
Even if you're not including all the archival stuff.
Yep.
I think Jared, you nailed it with the, looking for what's not obvious or getting what is not so obvious just based on the timeline. I think that's where weddings can shine and where we could all shine more is like, let's not get so fixated on that shot list, that we have in our heads going in, the details going in. Those are important in their own way, as we've discussed, but, the relationships are all happening. Remembering that the couple's not seeing most of the stuff we're capturing. They're not seeing these people interacting. They're not seeing, I think like a good starting point for all of us is like grandparents, for example, or maybe extended family that's there. Like, we're not always thinking about those people, but oftentimes this is going to be the last time maybe they have a really meaningful moment with their grandparents and making sure we're including them and just thinking about them. And that's not always so obvious. That's not on your timeline. Go get a shot of grandma doing something, So I think that's a good way to put it.
That's beautiful, man. I love that.
All right, man. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on the show, Josh. We'll definitely have you on again. We could probably talk about storytelling and people and connections. And this is what my closing thought, Josh, is I don't think you can make much more different types of work than what we make over here with Stop Go Love and Huxley Film and Merriman Films and what Josh is making with A Little Long Distance. But I feel like that's a good thing, don't you, Josh? Like, I feel like there's a connection that we have in terms of what's important to us as humans and storytellers that I think everyone can connect with. So if you're listening, I don't think the message is make a film. You should never get the message by listening to any other creative. Make what I make. The message should always be like, hey, this is how I think about what I make. And so, Josh, I think the best thing I've always enjoyed about you is not your work. It's the heart behind the work.
I really appreciate that, guys. Yeah, and I appreciate you guys chatting with me today. And I agree that I think we can all lock arms. It's kind of a shared mission of service and how we can serve the couples and hopefully all bring out our own brands and our own visions and our own voices, because I do think that's so unique to each one of us. So this has been a really, really interesting talk and encouraging to me, and appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, head over to alittlelongdistance.com. He's got some mentorships if you want to kind of explore this part of your own business a little bit more. Josh, I think, is a great person to talk to about this, and head over there. And of course, if you're on YouTube or if you're listening Spotify or wherever you're listening to this podcast, subscribe, leave a review. That is really helpful to us, guys. If you just hit that 5-star and just let the algorithms know that this is a helpful show, and because we want other filmmakers to connect with awesome content like what Josh has to share. And of course, Jason and Jared are geniuses who you need to be following.
It's true. It's true. I might even give a 5-star for this episode.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
But head over there, guys.
The one that we'll get is great.
We got one a couple years ago, Josh. It
was so great. We gave each other a high five. It was awesome.
It was a 1-star. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah. These guys are so...
It was like so arrogant. These people think they know everything. So I appreciated that authenticity that they shared with me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it still goes towards the algorithm. So we appreciate you guys. Yeah.
We'll take any of your stars.
But anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If not, then, listen to the next one. You might like it better. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks, guys.